1966, as you know, the United Nations General Assembly observed International Day of Tolerance on November 16th with activities that were directed towards both educational establishments and the wider public. And Blue Ridge Impact Consulting has been at the center of the movement of redefining education through transformative and sustainable models. And it is our hope that we can curate intentional access to knowledge, information, and resources for all, especially for those children and young adults who may not have a defined path to modalities of learning. So our conversation today is very special to me because it is a personal call to practice tolerance in all of its depths, especially in our rapidly changing world with turbulence, tragedy, fragmentation. And I'm so excited that I invited Mr. Robertson Work to share his reflections and his thoughts on contextualizing words and meanings and our own relationship with meanings that feed our actions. And whether in our personal realms or in our public interactions with society. Thank you, Mr. Work, for being here.
Oh, thank you, Amina, for inviting me. It's good to be back in dialogue with you. We've had a few in the past, but it's good to do again. And I was excited to see that you're teaching at City University of New York. I know you're enjoying it.
I am back at City, yes.
Wonderful.
So as we begin, as we begin our conversation, I would just like to put out there, we've been talking about tolerance and what tolerance means in all of its depths. We know that tolerance has to be more than something that is just passive, right? It has to be more than just being accepting of others and accepting of our environment. Tolerance to me means that there is an obligation to act. Tolerance, I also believe, must be taught. I believe it must be nurtured. It must be defended. And also perhaps it's a vehicle towards progress. It helps us in understanding the role that education, inclusion, and opportunities play in helping us build societies. So with that, Mr. Work, I would like to open the floor to some of your thoughts around how do we understand the term tolerance?
Yes, thank you. I was reflecting on that, and I noticed that the word is in English, the English word tolerance is from the Latin tolerans, which means to bear or endure or tolerate. But I was happy that UNESCO went far beyond that. When UNESCO defined in 1995, it said it includes respect and appreciation of differences with human rights for all. That's very different than just saying, I tolerate you, or I can endure you, or I will bear to live with you. I think I'm so happy that, of course, UNESCO said tolerance includes respect and appreciation of diversity and the differences of each person, and that each person has rights to flourish. So that was, I was glad to touch base with that. And then as you have mentioned previously, the words we use to talk about people are so important. They really tell us what we think of others. And that's why I love to begin with the question of what is a human being, after all, you know? What is this species, this Homo sapiens? I think the more our language is respectful of others, the more we then act with respect. So there is a link between language and behavior, or mindset and action. So I was looking around in the news at some of the unfortunate, hurtful words that are being used to talk about other people these days. You know, that, and they're about that some people are not human, you know. saying people of another race or religion, or that they're savages. We said that in the United States. When the Europeans came, we said, "Oh, these people aren't human; they're savages." Well, that was wrong. They were human beings. They are human beings. Or some people say that, "Oh, but they're just trash." Horrible, horrible. Or a slave. The word slave. What's that? That I say that this human being is my slave, or an infidel, or just collateral damage. If we are bombing people, it's just collateral damage. If we kill babies and women, or we call soldiers cannon fodder. It's just it's just part of warfare. And now we have someone running for president who was president before. He's saying everybody on the left is just vermin. He's using Hitler's word, vermin. They're just so. I think the more we're watchful of these words of intolerance, the more aware we can be. That those are not appropriate. We don't talk to our brothers and sisters that way, because we are all of one species. We are all of one nature. And I have other thoughts, but let me stop there and see what are you thinking?
Lately there's been a lot on my mind, and I'm sure it is with people who are actively watching the news, or trying to stay up to date with what's happening. And you mentioned contextualizing our words, or our words helping to contextualize our thoughts. And it reminded me of a conversation that I recently had with a dear friend of mine on regarding a South Asian writer and philosopher, Muhammad Iqbal. He was known as a reformist, progressive thinker. He outlined responsibilities of an individual within the parameters of a community. And his work spoke on the obligations of the individuals. And he said something like the human ego reveals itself as a unity of what we call mental states. And the mental states do not exist in isolation. They mean and they involve one another. They exist as a phase of a complex whole called the mind. And this was his concept of, in the Urdu language, is this term khudi, self. And I bring that around to the American novelist, poet, activist Wendell Berry's idea of contextualizing society by identifying problems and solutions. So as individuals, we exist in union with our space. And of course, the manner in which we codify the conditions around us are just projections. And then the words that we use and the meanings, as you mentioned, the words that we use and the meanings that we place to those ideas and situations can either restrict us or, I believe, can liberate us in our own responsibilities and obligations as individuals. And I feel like we have to take ownership as individuals when we are placing terms and voicing words and ideas, right? So those are my thoughts as you were sharing the idea that we are all humans, and we really are.
Yes, this. My experience is that we can make a fundamental decision to honor each person as a full human being with right to life and to flourish and to realize their full potential. And I was reflecting on cultures I've lived in for 5 years, 10 years, and what I learned about being human, in Malaysia, from the Malays and the Tamils and the British, and in Korea, I've learned so much about being human in Korea and Jamaica, the vitality of Jamaica, and in Venezuela, the energy in Venezuela. So I agree with you that sometimes I feel it's important to remember that when we think we're a separate self, it's really an illusion. You know, I cannot be separate without you, or without air or water or plants, animals, other humans, my parents, my grandparents, going back thousands, millions, billions of years. You know, we're all star stuff. The atoms in our body are from stars. You know, our universe is 13.8 billion years. So to think that, oh, I am just this separate ego, no, 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 that's an illusion. You know, I am part of all of it, the universe, the earth. That's why I have the picture of the earth behind me, because I'm just this minuscule earthling. And that picture is a picture of my tribe, my mother, my history, 4.5 billion years. So I love that. It's my favorite picture. The picture behind me is my very favorite picture. So I just wanted to share that. For me, it's an illusion to think that I am separate and I am superior from nature, from other beings, from society. And when we think that, we get lost in anger and fear, in hatred, pride, greed. You know, we get lost. So, and we forget our true nature, because I think our true nature is empathy and compassion, because we're mammals. And, you know, mammals are empathic. You know, elephants are very empathic. You know, gorillas are empathic. And dolphins, other mammals. And but we go beyond that as humans, in that we can be compassionate. We can help relieve suffering of others. So I've said too much. I just wanted to share those thoughts, that tolerance isn't just, I will tolerate your existence, and but I am called to be and to be connected with you and to care for you. That's what it means to be human. What do you think?
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And as you were sharing being part of the larger earth, it's just a particle, a fragment, that made me realize that, you know, we as people are so fragmented. We are growing more discontent, detached, dysregulated, disengaged from the very realities of our communities, of our neighbors, and those very dear to us. And there is so much intolerance that breeds tensions and conflicts. And you know, we are witnessing some of the largest crises of forced displacement, violations, carnage of the most basic human needs. And as individuals, all of these happenings around us lead us to feel hopeless and with a certain grief that lingers in the backdrop of our daily lives.
Yes.
And in your reflections, your meditation and your performative reflections, how do you recommend that we practice tolerance as an obligation?
Yes, thank you. Oh my, I couldn't agree with you more about the grief. You know, I feel the grief every day. I'm grieving the death of other species, the death of forests, the death of the oceans, the death of cultures, of languages, the death of people in warfare, the horrors of warfare. When, I mean, are we going to mature to beyond war? War is so primitive. No other animal does warfare the way we humans do. No other. We are the most violent animal. We can be the most compassionate animal and the most violent, hateful animal. So what I do, I acknowledge my grief, I acknowledge my sadness, and I begin just breathing, coming back to the present moment, the here and the now. And I breathe in air. You know, without air, I can only live 3 minutes without air. And water, I can only live 3 days without water. So I come back to this present moment, breathing in and breathing out in love and gratitude in the here and the now. And I just try to be at peace, in the present moment. And I do that throughout the day. I do that when I wake up. I do it when I go for a walk. I do it when I eat. I do it when I'm sitting. I do my breathing practice At night, when I wake up at 3 in the morning, I will practice breathing in and breathing out. And it is so simple. It sounds crazy because it's so simple. What? But we are all breathing. But when you're mindful of breathing, when you're aware that you're only alive because moment by moment because of breath, the mystery of being this mammal that can breathe in air through our nostrils, and we drink our water. You know, I have my water here. Drinking water is one of my jobs of each day, right? I try to drink 6 glasses of water every day. It's sometimes I think that's my main practice. Breathing air and drinking water are my main practices. And it's so simple. It sounds absurd. You know, is that all I've learned in 79 years, to drink water and breathe air? But I find it so healing and calming to just be in the present moment in gratitude for this life, for my neighbors, my family, my children, grandchildren, my wife, and my ancestors, and the 8 billion of us. My belief that the 8 billion of us humans around the earth, most of us are empathic and compassionate. It's very few that are trapped in the hatred and anger and pride and greed that we see in the news. You know, we see the news about, oh my, why did that horrible thing happen? We're shocked because it's not usual. Usually we're not expecting such horror. You know, we're expecting people to be kind to each other. That seems, I believe that is our nature. And so I find the 8 billion of us, and I don't have evidence, I don't have proof I'm right, but I feel that most of us are empathic and compassionate, and very few forget that and become attached to their ego, their separateness, their illusion that it's all about them. It's all about me, my wealth, my fame, my fortune, my religion, my culture, my nation. And that's an illusion. So my practice is to try to wake up. I mean, how do you? I know you have a practices. How do you deal with your grief?
Grief is difficult. Grief is on so many multiple levels. And I think with me personally, just trying to center myself, bring myself back to my own space, my own world. And sometimes we get criticized for keeping our world very small. But that is what I do for me personally, because I have to be present. I still have little children who wholeheartedly depend on me for every being of their lives. And so I have to be present in the moment for myself, for them, for those that I love and care deeply for. And self-reflection is something that I have found very powerful and healing. When we give ourselves time and space to reflect on our needs, our wants, when we define and make a distinction between our needs and wants, we come to this realization of what is important and what needs to be let go of. So for me personally is reflection, self-reflection, trying to gain more insight into my own actions and then specifically reactions of others around us, right? So we mentioned there's so much going on in the world, but as you mentioned, you have this belief that most human beings are kind and compassionate. And I believe that too. And most of the atrocities or horrors that we hear about or that we notice taking place, they're all reactions. And once we break down situations and contextualize reactions and where those reactions are coming from, I think that helps us understand the world around us. It also helps us understand ourselves in the process. I think that healing is is very beneficial. Healing is important. Whether it's having your cup of tea in solitude, or it's your breathing, or having your 6 glasses of water a day. All of these things are privileges, right? This is our privilege that I get to wake up, and I get to wake up every morning. It is my privilege that I get to breathe in and out air that is good for me. Because we have to be mindful that not all people all over the world have clean air. That I can drink clean water because it is available to me, because not all individuals around the world, as we know, unfortunately, have access to clean water. So these are all privileges. And once we start identifying our own needs and wants and desires, I think that helps us become better human beings to ourselves. We have to give ourselves grace as well. And also in our actions and reactions to those around us and those that we love.
Beautifully put. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Very touching. I love your emphasis on reflection. That's one of my jobs also. I love to reflect. And so for 56 years, I've kept a daily journal. First it was written, and now it's typed. And it's so helpful, to stop, think, reflect, feel, and write. For me, it helps to write, to turn my feelings and thoughts into words. And then I can look back at them, and I say, oh. And so reflection is very important, to be a reflective person. I couldn't agree with you more. And I love the way you talked about coming back to the present moment to care for your loved ones. And so fundamental. No, thank you so much for what you said. It really touched me. And your emphasis on caring for the self. It's not selfish to care for yourself. Mm-hmm. It's essential to care for yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, so that you can care for others. If I'm sick mentally or physically or emotionally, it's hard for me to care for others. But if I can be happy and if I can be healthy, then I can help relieve the suffering of others. So I think compassion is first self-compassion. How do I have compassion for myself? And then I can have compassion for you, for my grandchildren, for the people in the Middle East, in Africa and Asia. I'm so grateful that I've learned from people all over the world in my work and travels. So I have proof that people are people everywhere. They're not anything less than me. And as you said, you and I may have privilege of clean water and clean air, but I'm now concerned because of climate chaos. It's all in danger. So we have more work to be done. That we are harming the earth, we're harming the air and the water and the soil, the animals, the plants, and our fellow brothers and sisters as humans. So we have so much to do. And that's why I look to people like yourself, who are devoting yourself, from your daily care of your lovely family to your students and your consulting relations. And I find it's amazing what all that you're doing. I go to your website and say, oh, Amina is so engaged in doing so much. You're helping here. And so you really touch my heart, with what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you for those kind words. We talked about obligations and responsibilities. And I think for me personally, it's just something that I feel like I have to engage in. If there is something I can do in my own little space, then I will find the time to do it. But you mentioned environmental degradation. And that is something that is also very close to my heart, because we're not just endangering our environment, everything around us, but we're also endangering ourselves, our future generations. And we only have one planet Earth. as we see from your background. And we need to wake up. There's an awakening, there's a wake-up call. And thankfully there are very amazing people out there that are doing wonderful work like yourself. But I go back to Wendell Berry's, because I was reading this yesterday. I go back to Wendell Berry's concept of the way we identify problems helps us find solutions.
Mm.
So our words, the words that we use, the words that we give meaning to and associate with specific problems like climate change at the moment and environmental degradation, these are the words. The words have to be honest and authentic, because only then will those words lead us to solutions that are viable and sustainable. Otherwise, it's just a buzzword. It's a catch-all phrase. Another catch-all phrase that I am not a fan of is diversity and inclusion.
Mm.
Okay, but how do we practice diversity and inclusion? How does that become a solution? How does that move the needle forward towards something that is completely viable and sustainable for generations to come? Where is our obligation? Where is our action? Where is our responsibility in those terms? So that is something that I grapple with a lot in my area of work and also in my personal space.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, I often feel I'm not doing enough because if I look at my past, I began in community development, living in poor slums and villages, helping people help themselves. And then I shifted to the policy level in the UN, helping countries develop policies for urban development and urban governance. And then I taught grad school, and I love my students. So now I'm not doing community development or organizational development or policy, giving policy advice or teaching. I'm just at 79. I'm writing, and I'm speaking, and I'm trying to love my family and my neighbors. And I want to do more. I say, well, yes, I'm a writer and a speaker, and I try to be a good neighbor, a good grandfather, but I keep saying, what more? And next year I'll be getting out the vote, in 2024. We've got to keep back the fascists. The fascists are not going to take over. We're going to keep being pro-women and pro-environment and pro-Medicare and pro-Social Security and pro-education for all, pro-health for all. We're not going to let those other folks, and they're my brothers and sisters, but I don't agree with them. I think we got to get out the vote, and so I will be doing that. But I keep thinking, is there something else I should be doing as I approach 80? I think there is. I'm looking for it. I'm looking. I don't know what it is, but I'm looking.
Thank you for sharing that. This year specifically, as I entered my 40s, I have made it my mission this year to find my own calling. Being a mother, being a professor, being a wife, being a daughter, being a consultant, all of these hats are there. But I have made it my mission to try to connect with myself, because I have felt that I have just been constantly on the go. More school, job, work, life, fitting into molds and working through parameters. And so by connecting, I'm not going to say reconnecting, but connecting with myself and who am I? Where is my place? Why am I here on planet Earth? What can I do? What can I offer others? And also, where am I coming from? And so being a daughter of immigrant parents, that is another dimension for me, right?
Mhm.
Because I sometimes feel that I am so connected to my ethnicity, but I live in a completely different space. Growing
Yeah.
up, I grew up in the South. I grew up in the Carolinas.
Uh-huh.
So, what are the similarities between my ethnic identity and then my relevant present identity? And what I'm finding is that there are no separate identities. It is all one identity that brings me to this place right now where I am. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine a few days back about how I have spent, looking back, I have spent probably decades trying to connect with my own ethnicity. Um, um, Traveling back to Pakistan, doing a lot of research on Pakistan and women and politics and societal dimensions and history and music and what all of that means and where does that bring me to this point. And so there's been this constant urge to seek something that will help me understand where I am today and that this is where I'm supposed to be. And once I feel as individuals, once we understand why we are where we are in the present, we can then forge our path forward and help
Beautiful.
thrive and grow. And then also share that with my own. I have 3 little daughters. I want to share that part of me with my own 3 little daughters so that they have something tangible to hold on to as part of their identities. And again, I'm finding that there are no multiple identities. There's just one identity.
Mm.
All of this is what makes me who I am and brings me here in the present, speaking with you about it.
Oh, wow. Oh, Amina, your daughters are so fortunate, and your students are so fortunate to have you. As you speak, I keep thinking, is she writing this? She needs to write this down. You know, you need to write. I know you're an academic. It's one of your part of your identity. It's part, but I hope you will write your reflections and thoughts and feelings, and because you have a very powerful lesson to share with others. You know, if you're and I think of my boss in the UN was Pakistani, Dr. Shabir Chima, and he was also my best man in my wedding 20 years ago or 17 years ago when I remarried after the death of my wife. And so, you know, and I have another, anyway, so I really hope you will write your not only academic writing, but personal or sharing of your reflections. Uh, Not only your daughters need it, but the world needs it. Please, please write.
No, thank you so much, Mr. Burke. Um, is there anything else you would like to share with our audience before we bring a close to our dialogue discussion?
I think we've covered a lot. So I so grateful that you and I could talk on for a UN International Day of Tolerance, knowing that tolerance is much, much more than tolerating other people, but we're called to respect and to celebrate and to learn from everyone we meet, everyone, and to help them be the greatest being they can be. Just as you were saying, you're learning how to be the greatest being you can be. How can we help each of the 8 billion of us to be the Einstein that they are? So thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's pledge to follow the path defined by more dialogues, by more cohesion, by understanding of respect that is mutual. And I think that's key, and most importantly, reflection. Thank you so much for spending this time with you. As always, it's been so humbling just an amazing experience. You have this very Zen aura about you, and I've mentioned that to you before as well. So thank you so much, and I hope to chat with you soon.
It would be my pleasure, and much love to your family and your students.